Marcus Ellis glanced once more at his reflection in the glass of the airport cafe window. The polished surface mirrored his composed exterior, a crisp suit, neatly combed hair, and the faint lines of determination etched around his eyes. Yet beneath the veneer of professionalism, anxiety gnawed at him. Today wasn't just any flight, it was the journey that could redefine his career. He took a deep breath, savoring the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee before him. The bustling terminal thrummed with life, families bidding tearful goodbyes, solo travelers lost in thought, and businesspeople like himself hustling to their gates. Marcus had always thrived in such environments, finding solace in the orchestrated chaos. But today, the stakes were higher. His upcoming presentation to the board of directors could secure his promotion, a step he had worked tirelessly for over the past year. Marcus tucked his carry-on bag under his arm and glanced at his watch. Gate C12 was just down the corridor, and he couldn't afford to be late. He had meticulously planned every detail of his trip, from his outfits to his notes, ensuring nothing was left to chance. As he stood, he caught the sympathetic smile of a young mother struggling with her stroller. He offered a brief nod in return, a silent acknowledgement of shared struggles and silent support. The check-in process was swift. Marcus handed his passport and boarding pass to the attendant, exchanging a few polite words before proceeding through security. The scanner beeped as he walked through, and he retrieved his belongings, mentally ticking off the items he had packed. Everything was in order: phone, wallet, laptop, and the meticulously organized presentation folder that could make or break his professional future. Once through, he navigated the maze of the airport with practiced ease, making his way to Gate C12. The airport's modern design, with its high ceilings and sleek lines, often reminded him of the corporate world he was a part of, structured, efficient, and unforgiving. He found his seat in the bustling waiting area, pulling out his phone to review his notes one last time. The pages were filled with bullet points, charts, and graphs that he had refined over countless hours. As he sat, Marcus's thoughts drifted to his family. His wife, Elena, had been his rock throughout this journey, offering unwavering support despite the long hours and mounting pressures. Their 2 children, Lily and Noah, were the light of his life, their laughter a constant reminder of why he pushed himself so hard. Marcus had always believed in leading by example, striving to provide not just materially but emotionally for his loved ones. A voice over the loudspeaker announced the final boarding call for Flight 237 to New York City. Marcus gathered his belongings, his heart quickening with anticipation. He moved towards the gate, blending into the stream of passengers. The flight attendants guided everyone towards the plane with practiced precision, their uniforms crisp and smiles rehearsed. Boarding the plane, Marcus felt a mix of excitement and tension. He chose his window seat, the perfect vantage point to observe the cabin and prepare mentally for the flight ahead. As he settled in, he noticed the flight attendants moving with synchronized efficiency, their movements fluid and purposeful. Among them stood a woman who immediately caught his attention. Tessa Blake. Her name tag gleamed under the overhead lights, and her posture was impeccable, straight-backed and exuding an air of authority. She moved through the aisle with deliberate grace, her eyes scanning the passengers with a professional detachment that suggested no-nonsense competence. Marcus couldn't help but feel a subtle tension as their eyes met briefly. There was something in her gaze, perhaps a flicker of impatience or a hint of disapproval, that unsettled him. Though he couldn't quite place it, Marcus shook off the unease, focusing instead on the flight's routine announcements. The intercom crackled to life with the captain's voice, providing the usual safety instructions and updates. Marcus reviewed his presentation one last time, his mind sharp and focused. He had prepared for every possible question, every potential challenge. Confidence surged through him, masking the underlying anxiety. As the cabin lights dimmed and passengers began to settle, Marcus felt the familiar hum of anticipation. The flight would soon take off, and with it, his aspirations would either soar or stumble. He glanced around the cabin, observing the diverse array of passengers, each with their own stories, their own reasons for traveling. It was a microcosm of society, a confined space where interactions could range from cordial to contentious. The engines roared to life, vibrating through the cabin as the plane taxied towards the runway. Marcus felt a surge of adrenaline as the plane accelerated, lifting off the ground with a powerful thrust. The cityscape below receded, replaced by the vast expanse of the sky. He took a moment to appreciate the view from his window, the clouds stretching endlessly in every direction. Settling back into his seat, Marcus allowed himself a brief moment of calm. He closed his eyes, centering himself for the week ahead. This flight was not just a physical journey but a pivotal step in his professional and personal life. He was ready to face whatever challenges awaited him, determined to prove his worth and secure the future he had worked so hard to build. Little did he know, the turbulence he would encounter on this flight would test his resilience and force him to confront prejudices that lay hidden beneath the surface of everyday interactions. As the plane cruised smoothly above the clouds, Marcus felt a sense of purpose solidify within him. Whatever happened next, he was prepared to navigate the storm with grace and unwavering determination. Marcus Ellis settled into his window seat, the fabric of the upholstery soft yet resilient beneath him. He glanced out the window, watching the ground shrink away as the plane began its ascent. The familiar hum of the engines provided a steady backdrop to his thoughts, a comforting rhythm that helped steady his nerves. He pulled out his laptop, intending to review his presentation one last time before the flight. The screen displayed meticulously organized slides, each one crafted to convey his ideas with clarity and precision. The cabin was a blend of subdued conversations and the occasional rustle of pages turning. Passengers were settling into their routines, some scrolling through their phones, others engrossed in books or lost in thought. The flight attendants moved gracefully through the aisle, their movements synchronized and efficient. The air was tinged with a mix of anticipation and the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee, remnants from the pre-flight service. Marcus took a moment to appreciate the quiet efficiency around him. Despite the crowded space, there was an unspoken order that made the confined environment manageable. He exhaled deeply, allowing himself a brief moment of relaxation before diving back into his work. His fingers danced over the keyboard, making final adjustments to his slides, ensuring every detail was perfect. This presentation was more than just a routine update, it was a pivotal moment that could propel his career to new heights. As he immersed himself in his notes, a subtle disturbance caught his attention. He looked up to see Tessa Blake, the flight attendant who had left a lingering impression during boarding, approaching his row with a measured stride. Her uniform was impeccable, the silver accents gleaming under the cabin lights. Marcus had noticed her earlier, a woman who exuded authority and precision, her demeanor calm yet unapproachable. He watched as Tessa made her way down the aisle, her eyes scanning the passengers with practiced detachment. There was an air of competence about her, but also something else, an edge that suggested she was not one to be easily swayed or perturbed. Marcus felt a flicker of unease, a vague sense that their earlier brief eye contact had been more significant than he had initially thought. Determined not to let his anxiety interfere, Marcus returned his focus to his presentation. He scrolled through his slides, mentally rehearsing his key points. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the captain made the final announcements, signaling that the plane was preparing for takeoff. Passengers adjusted their seats and stowed away any remaining carry-ons, the atmosphere shifting towards the imminent departure. Tessa approached his row, her presence unmistakable. She stopped beside him, her gaze briefly meeting his before she turned to another passenger with a practiced smile. Marcus cleared his throat, signaling her presence, and waited patiently. After a moment, Tessa offered a polite nod before moving on, leaving Marcus to wonder about the subtle tension she had conveyed. He dismissed it as pre-flight stress, convincing himself that she was merely fulfilling her duties with professionalism. As the plane began its steady climb, Marcus leaned back in his seat, allowing himself to sink into the rhythm of the flight. He glanced around the cabin, observing the diverse array of passengers, each person a story, a reason for being on this journey. Amidst the crowd, he noticed a middle-aged man sitting a few rows ahead, meticulously organizing his documents. Another passenger, a young woman with a laptop, typed away with focused intensity. A soft chime announced the start of the beverage service, and Tessa reappeared at the front of the cabin, leading her team with seamless coordination. She approached the passengers, her movements fluid as she navigated the narrow aisle. Marcus decided to wait until the service settled before making his request, preferring to observe first. Minutes passed, and the initial rush of passengers began to ebb. Tessa returned to his row, this time with a cart laden with drinks and snacks. Marcus offered a polite smile, gesturing to the empty spot beside him. "Excuse me, Tessa," he began, his voice calm and measured. "Could I please have a bottle of water?" Tessa paused, her eyes flickering with a momentary lapse of composure. "Water service will start shortly after takeoff," she replied, her tone professional but tinged with an unspoken irritation. She placed a small plate with a selection of beverages on the tray before moving on, leaving Marcus with a lingering sense of unease. He glanced around, noting the indifferent expressions of the nearby passengers. Some continued their conversations, oblivious to the subtle tension, while others offered sympathetic nods. Marcus shrugged off the interaction, attributing it to Tessa's high standards and the pressures of pre-flight duties. He returned to his laptop, pushing the unsettling feeling to the back of his mind. As the minutes ticked by, the cabin settled into a rhythm. The flight attendants continued their rounds, attending to passengers with efficiency and grace. Marcus observed Tessa as she interacted with others, her demeanor consistently composed yet distant. He couldn't shake the feeling that her glance had been more than a mere professional assessment. There was an undercurrent of judgment that made him uncomfortable. A soft announcement echoed through the cabin, signaling the beginning of in-flight service. Marcus took this opportunity to stretch his legs, standing up briefly to adjust his posture. As he returned to his seat, he noticed Mia Collins, a young flight attendant with a warm smile and a genuine air of empathy, offering assistance to a passenger struggling with their seatbelt. Mia's kindness was a stark contrast to Tessa's detached professionalism, and Marcus found himself drawn to her approachable nature. "Everything all right, sir?" Mia asked, noticing his brief moment of tension. "Yes, thank you," Marcus replied, offering a grateful smile. "Just preparing for my presentation." Mia nodded understandingly. "If you need anything else, feel free to let me know." "Thank you, Mia," he said, appreciating her attentiveness. He returned to his seat, feeling a small measure of comfort from Mia's presence. Her genuine concern was a welcome respite from the earlier encounter with Tessa. Marcus resumed his preparation, this time with a slight ease in his demeanor. Meanwhile, David Harris, the seasoned businessman who had been observing from a few rows ahead, glanced in Marcus's direction. David was a tall man with a commanding presence, his experience evident in his confident posture and the way he carried himself. He had noticed the subtle tension between Marcus and Tessa and offered a discreet nod of solidarity. Marcus acknowledged the gesture with a grateful smile, feeling a sense of camaraderie in the midst of the confined space. As the flight progressed, the routine announcements continued, interspersed with occasional updates from the captain. The cabin remained a blend of quiet concentration and subdued conversations, the passengers adapting to the rhythm of the journey. Marcus found himself slipping into a state of focused calm, the earlier unease gradually fading as he immersed himself in his work. However, the sense of tension lingered beneath the surface, an unspoken undercurrent that seemed to pulse through the interactions between passengers and flight staff. Marcus couldn't help but notice the occasional sharp glance from Tessa as she passed by, her eyes briefly meeting his before she moved on with a stiff professionalism. It was as if there was an invisible barrier separating them, a silent judgment that Marcus couldn't quite decipher. During a lull in the service, Marcus decided to take a break from his laptop. He looked out the window again, watching as the landscape transformed from urban sprawl to the vast expanse of clouds. The serenity of the view was a stark contrast to the mounting tension he felt within the cabin. He sighed, leaning back into his seat, and allowed himself a moment of reflection. His mind wandered to the presentation awaiting him in New York City. This was a crucial opportunity to showcase his strategic vision and leadership capabilities. The stakes were high, and Marcus was determined to make a lasting impression. He had poured countless hours into preparing, refining every detail to ensure his ideas were conveyed with clarity and impact. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, but he relished the challenge. As he refocused on his notes, Tessa approached his row once more, her presence a reminder of the unresolved tension. This time, she carried a notepad and pen, her expression inscrutable. Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze with a polite nod. "Is there something you need, Miss Blake?" he asked, maintaining his composure. Tessa paused, her eyes narrowing slightly as she scrutinized him. "Just ensuring all passengers are comfortable and adhering to our service protocols," she replied, her tone neutral but carrying an undercurrent of something unspoken. "Understood," Marcus responded, offering a courteous smile. "If there's anything else you require, please let me know." Tessa gave a curt nod before moving on, her steps brisk and purposeful. Marcus felt a shiver of unease run down his spine, the encounter leaving him unsettled once again. He dismissed the feeling, attributing it to the pressures of the day, and returned to his preparation. The flight continued smoothly, the hours passing with the steady rhythm of in-flight service and the occasional interaction between passengers and crew. Marcus found himself slipping into a comfortable routine, the earlier tension gradually dissipating as he immersed himself in his work. Yet, the memory of Tessa's scrutinizing gaze lingered, a subtle reminder that their initial encounter was far from over. As the plane began its descent towards New York City, Marcus felt a renewed sense of focus. The presentation awaited him, and he was determined to excel. He closed his laptop, taking a moment to gather his thoughts and prepare for the challenges ahead. The cabin lights brightened slightly, signaling the approach to landing and the anticipation that came with it. Tessa approached his row one final time, her presence a silent reminder of the unresolved tension between them. Marcus met her gaze with a composed smile, a silent challenge beneath the surface. "Thank you for your service, Miss Blake," he said, his tone polite yet firm. Tessa offered a brief, tight-lipped smile before moving on, her demeanor unchanging. Marcus watched her go, his mind racing with thoughts and emotions he couldn't quite articulate. The flight had been a microcosm of the challenges he faced in his professional life, battles for respect, the struggle against unseen prejudices, and the quest to assert his worth in a competitive world. As the plane touched down and taxied towards the gate, Marcus felt a surge of anticipation. The journey was nearing its end, but the challenges he had faced on board were just beginning to unfold. He gathered his belongings, his mind sharp and ready for what lay ahead. The final moments of the flight were a blur of movements and sounds, the disembarking process a well-orchestrated dance of passengers and crew. Marcus stood, slipping out of his seat with practiced ease, and made his way towards the exit. As he passed by, he noticed Mia Collins assisting another passenger, her genuine smile a beacon of kindness in the controlled environment of the cabin. "Have a great day, Marcus," she called out softly, her voice warm and encouraging. "Thank you, Mia," he replied, offering a grateful nod. "You too." He caught David Harris's eye as he made his way down the aisle, the seasoned businessman's supportive gaze a silent gesture of solidarity. Marcus felt a sense of camaraderie in the midst of the challenges he had faced, a reminder that he was not alone in his struggle. As he exited the plane and stepped into the bustling terminal, the tension of the flight began to ebb away, replaced by the anticipation of the professional challenges awaiting him in New York City. He took a deep breath, savoring the blend of relief and determination that coursed through him. The journey had tested his resolve, but it had also strengthened his commitment to excellence and fairness. Little did he know, the in-flight tensions and the subtle undercurrents of prejudice he had encountered were just the beginning of a much larger battle he was about to face. The support of strangers and the unwavering resolve within himself would soon propel him into a confrontation that would challenge his beliefs, his dignity, and his very sense of justice. As Marcus walked towards the arrivals area, his mind clear and focused, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The flight had been a test of patience and resilience, but it had also ignited a spark within him, a determination to stand up against injustice and to fight for the respect and recognition he deserved. With every step he took, Marcus felt more prepared to navigate the complexities of both his professional and personal life, knowing that he had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The flight progressed smoothly, the rhythmic hum of the engines providing a steady backdrop to the unfolding events within the cabin. Marcus Ellis felt a temporary reprieve from the earlier unease, his focus returning to the final touches of his presentation. He glanced around, observing the diverse tapestry of passengers, each absorbed in their own worlds, oblivious to the silent tension that simmered just beneath the surface. As the beverage service commenced, Tessa Blake reappeared at the front of the cabin, her presence commanding yet distant. She moved with calculated precision, her every step deliberate, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. Marcus watched her for a moment, noting the way her eyes scanned the passengers with detached efficiency. There was an underlying rigidity to her demeanor, a strict adherence to protocol that bordered on inflexibility. Marcus decided it was time to address his earlier request for water. He glanced at Mia Collins, the young flight attendant who had offered him kindness, and felt a silent appreciation for her empathetic nature. With a deep breath, he lifted his hand, signaling for Tessa's attention. "Excuse me, Miss Blake," Marcus began, his voice calm and steady. "Could I please have a bottle of water?" Tessa paused, her eyes briefly meeting his before she turned to assess the situation. "Certainly, sir," she replied, her tone neutral yet carrying a hint of impatience. She reached for a bottle on the cart and handed it to him, her fingers brushing against his in a manner that felt slightly dismissive. "Thank you," Marcus responded, accepting the bottle with a polite nod. He took a small sip, relishing the cool refreshment as it soothed his parched throat. However, the brief moment of relief was short-lived. As Tessa moved on, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that her demeanor had subtly shifted, her gaze lingering on him with a newfound scrutiny. Minutes later, Marcus felt the familiar dryness in his throat returning, the anticipation of his upcoming meeting weighing heavily on him. He glanced at Mia, who was assisting another passenger with their beverage order, her smile warm and genuine. Their eyes met briefly, and she offered him an encouraging nod, a silent gesture of solidarity. Deciding not to let the minor interaction unsettle him, Marcus returned his focus to his presentation. He reviewed his slides one last time, ensuring that every detail was in place. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing the commencement of in-flight service. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude for the routine that provided a semblance of normalcy amidst the underlying tension. As the service progressed, Tessa made her rounds with unwavering precision, her interactions with passengers devoid of warmth or personal connection. Marcus couldn't help but notice the subtle shifts in her behavior, her eyes darting towards him more frequently, her responses to his requests tinged with an unspoken judgment. He dismissed it as the result of her strict professionalism, convincing himself that she was simply adhering to the airline standards. However, the atmosphere began to change when a fellow passenger, David Harris, approached Marcus's row. David was a tall man with a commanding presence, his tailored suit and confident demeanor exuding authority. He offered Marcus a friendly smile before discreetly placing a bottle of water on his tray. "Looks like you could use this," David whispered, his voice low and respectful. Marcus accepted the bottle gratefully, feeling a momentary sense of camaraderie. "Thank you, David. I appreciate it." Before he could respond further, Tessa appeared once more, her expression hardening as she noticed the water in Marcus's hand. Her lips pursed into a tight line, and her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Sir," she addressed him, her voice carrying a clipped edge. "Are you sure you didn't bring anything else to drink on board?" Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment and frustration. "I haven't brought anything else," he replied firmly, maintaining his composure. "I only asked for water." Tessa stepped closer, her presence imposing. "We have strict policies regarding outside beverages, sir. It's against airline regulations to consume anything brought from outside." Marcus's patience was beginning to wear thin. "I understand the policies, but this is just water. I didn't bring anything else." Tessa's gaze bore into him, her tone icy. "Your breath seems to carry an unusual scent. Are you certain there's nothing else you've consumed?" Marcus felt a spark of anger ignite within him, but he restrained himself. "I assure you, Miss Blake, there's nothing else. I simply need some water." The surrounding passengers began to sense the growing tension, their conversations dwindling into curious murmurs. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, a mix of judgment and discomfort washing over him. He took a deep breath, reminding himself to stay calm and collected. Tessa leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "If there's any trouble or disruption on this flight, I have full authority to call security upon landing." Marcus clenched his fists under the table, fighting to keep his emotions in check. "I'm not causing any trouble. I just need some water to stay hydrated." Tessa straightened up, her demeanor unwavering. "Please remember that maintaining order on this flight is my responsibility. Any issues will be addressed accordingly." She moved away, leaving Marcus with an unsettling feeling. He glanced around, noting that no other passengers had intervened, their silence amplifying his sense of isolation. Determined not to let her accusations take root, Marcus decided to address the situation head-on. A few minutes later, he once again raised his hand, this time with a more assertive tone. "Miss Blake, I need another bottle of water, please." Tessa approached him again, her expression unchanging. "Are you sure you want just water, sir? We also have a selection of juices and sodas available." Marcus felt a tightening in his chest but maintained his composure. "Yes, just water. Thank you." As she moved on, Marcus caught a glimpse of Mia watching the exchange with a concerned expression. Her support, though silent, provided a small measure of comfort. However, the situation was far from resolved. The flight continued, but the underlying tension remained palpable. Each interaction with Tessa reinforced the growing unease that Marcus felt. He tried to focus on his presentation, but his mind kept returning to the unjust treatment he was receiving. The flight attendants maintained their professional facade, but Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being unfairly targeted. During the meal service, Marcus decided to take a moment to stretch and gather his thoughts. As he stood, he felt a tap on his shoulder and turned to see David offering a sympathetic smile. "Tough flight, huh?" David remarked quietly. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of his frustration. "You could say that." David placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't let her get to you. You're doing great, and I'm sure your presentation will be a success." Before Marcus could respond, Tessa approached him once more, her expression stern. "Sir, I must insist that you comply with our policies. Any further requests will be noted." Marcus felt a surge of defiance but restrained himself. I'm only asking for what any other passenger is entitled to. Water and food are basic needs." Tessa's eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer, her voice lowering to a threatening whisper. "If you continue to escalate this situation, I will have no choice but to involve security." The threat hung in the air, the implication clear. Marcus felt the weight of her authority pressing down on him. But he refused to back down. "I'm not escalating anything. I just want to be treated with the same respect and dignity as everyone else on this flight." At that moment, a ripple of murmurs spread through the cabin as other passengers began to take notice of the confrontation. Marcus could feel their eyes on him, the silent judgment intensifying his frustration. He took another deep breath, determined to stand his ground. "Miss Blake." Marcus addressed her directly, his voice steady and firm. "Your assumptions about me are unwarranted and unfair. I expect to be treated with respect." Tessa's facade of professionalism cracked for a split second, revealing a flash of something darker beneath. "Sir, I suggest you calm down. This behavior is unacceptable on our flight." Before Marcus could respond, another flight attendant approached, the younger Mia Collins. "Is everything all right here?" she inquired, her voice gentle yet authoritative. Tessa shot her a sharp look before turning back to Marcus. "Everything is perfectly fine. I just need to ensure that all passengers are adhering to our policies." Mia glanced between the two, sensing the tension. "If there's anything I can do to assist, please let me know," she offered, her tone sincere. Marcus nodded appreciatively, taking the opportunity to defuse the situation. "Thank you, Mia. I just need some water and perhaps a brief moment to gather my thoughts." Tessa sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "Very well, sir. I'll bring you another bottle of water." As she moved away, Marcus felt a mix of relief and lingering frustration. The confrontation had only heightened his awareness of the unfair treatment he was receiving. He glanced around, noticing that more passengers were now looking in his direction, their expressions ranging from sympathy to indifference. Determined not to let the situation escalate further, Marcus returned to his seat, his resolve hardening. He knew that standing up against injustice was necessary, not just for himself but for anyone who might face similar treatment in the future. The support from David and Mia gave him the strength to continue, reminding him that he wasn't alone in this struggle. As the flight continued, Marcus maintained his composure, focusing on his presentation and the support around him. Yet, the tension between him and Tessa remained, an unspoken battle of wills that would soon reach its boiling point. The confined space of the airplane amplified every interaction, turning mundane requests into high-stakes confrontations. Little did Marcus know, the events of this flight would set in motion a chain of actions that would challenge not only his professional aspirations but also his personal resilience. The struggle for respect and dignity was just beginning, and Marcus was determined to navigate it with unwavering determination. The cabin had settled into a steady rhythm, the initial turbulence of the flight giving way to a deceptive calm. Marcus Ellis tried to immerse himself in his work, but the earlier interactions with Tessa Blake continued to gnaw at the edges of his composure. Each time he glanced towards the front of the plane, Tessa's stern expression seemed to follow him, a silent reminder of the unresolved tension between them. As the in-flight service resumed, Marcus felt a familiar dryness in his throat. He glanced around, hoping to spot another opportunity to request water. But the cabin remained mostly subdued. Tessa moved through the aisle with her usual precision, her interactions brisk and devoid of warmth. Marcus took a deep breath, gathering his courage to make another request. "Miss Blake," he began, his voice calm but edged with firmness. "Could I please have another bottle of water?" Tessa paused, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment before she turned away. "I'm sorry, sir," she replied curtly, her tone leaving little room for negotiation. "Water service will be available shortly." Marcus nodded, but the frustration simmering beneath his calm exterior refused to subside. He took a sip from the bottle he had managed to secure earlier, relishing the cool liquid that temporarily soothed his parched throat. However, the brief respite was overshadowed by the growing sense of injustice he felt. A few rows ahead, David Harris observed the unfolding situation with a discerning eye. The seasoned businessman had been watching Marcus and Tessa with increasing concern, recognizing the subtle signs of discrimination in her demeanor. As Marcus raised his hand once more, signaling for assistance, David knew it was time to act. With a discreet nod, David approached Marcus's row, placing a bottle of water on his tray before Tessa could intervene. "Here you go, Marcus," he whispered, his voice low and respectful. "Thought you might need this." Marcus accepted the bottle gratefully, feeling a surge of gratitude towards David. "Thank you." David, I appreciate it. Before he could say more, Tessa reappeared, her presence once again casting a shadow over the interaction. Her eyes flicked to the bottle David had placed on Marcus's tray, and her expression hardened with suspicion. Sir, she addressed Marcus, her voice dripping with condescension. Are you sure you didn't bring anything else to drink on board? Marcus felt a flush of anger rise within him, but he restrained himself, determined to maintain his composure. I haven't brought anything else, he responded firmly. I only need water. Tessa's gaze bore into him, her tone icy. We have strict policies regarding outside beverages. It's against airline regulations to consume anything brought from outside. Marcus's frustration boiled beneath the surface, but he kept his voice steady. I'm not bringing anything else. I just need water to stay hydrated. Tessa stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she scrutinized him. Your breath carries an unusual scent. Sir, are you certain there's nothing else you've consumed? The accusation hung in the air, the tension thickening the confined space of the cabin. Marcus clenched his fists under the table, fighting the urge to lash out. He glanced towards Mia Collins, the empathetic flight attendant, who watched the exchange with concern etched on her face. Before Marcus could respond, David stepped forward, his presence commanding yet calm. Miss Blake, he interjected, his voice steady. I believe Marcus is being unfairly targeted here. Tessa shot David a sharp look, her authority challenged. Sir, I suggest you refrain from interfering in passenger service matters. David remained unfazed, his gaze unwavering. I'm simply ensuring that Marcus receives the service he's entitled to. There's no need for further tension. Mia hesitated, torn between her duty to follow protocol and her desire to support Marcus. Her internal conflict was evident in the way she glanced between the two men. Her loyalty pulled in different directions. Tessa sighed, her frustration palpable. Very well, sir. I'll bring you a bottle of water shortly. With that, she turned away, leaving a trail of uneasy silence in her wake. Marcus let out a slow breath, the weight of the confrontation pressing down on him. He glanced around the cabin, noticing that the other passengers were now more attuned to the tension between him and Tessa. Some offered sympathetic smiles, while others avoided eye contact, their discomfort evident. As the minutes dragged on, Marcus felt the emotional toll of the situation intensify. Anger and humiliation swirled within him, each interaction with Tessa a reminder of the prejudice he was facing. He tried to focus on his presentation, but the unfair treatment gnawed at his concentration, threatening to derail his composed exterior. Just as Marcus began to lose hope of receiving further assistance, Tessa returned with a fresh bottle of water. She placed it on his tray with a curt nod before moving on to the next passenger, her steps brisk and unyielding. Marcus accepted the water silently, his gratitude unspoken but deeply felt. However, the tension between them had only deepened. Each glance from Tessa was laced with suspicion, her demeanor unchanging despite the escalating conflict. Marcus could feel the eyes of the other passengers on him, their silent judgments adding to his sense of isolation. Determined not to let the situation consume him, Marcus decided it was time to take a stand. He lifted his hand once more, his voice firm and unwavering. Miss Blake, I need assistance with my meal as well. I haven't received anything yet. Tessa approached again, her expression hardening as she assessed him. Are you sure you don't need anything else besides water, sir? Marcus felt his patience waning but remained composed. Yes, I need my meal. I've been waiting for a long time. Tessa's eyes narrowed, and she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a low, threatening tone. If you continue to escalate this situation, I will have no choice but to involve security upon landing. The threat hung in the air, the implication clear and ominous. Marcus felt a surge of defiance rise within him, but he restrained himself, knowing that reacting impulsively would only worsen the situation. He glanced towards Mia, whose conflicted expression mirrored his own turmoil. Before he could respond, David stepped forward once more, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. Miss Blake, he said firmly, Marcus is simply requesting the services he's entitled to. There's no need for further confrontation. Tessa's patience had worn thin, her demeanor rigid and unyielding. Sir, I suggest you calm down. Any further requests will be noted. Marcus felt the breaking point approaching, the emotional strain becoming almost unbearable. I'm not trying to cause any trouble, he replied, his voice steady but edged with frustration. I just want to be treated with the same respect and dignity as everyone else on this flight. Tessa's facade of professionalism cracked for a split second, revealing a flash of something darker beneath. Sir, Your behavior is unacceptable and disruptive. Please remember that maintaining order is my responsibility." At that moment, the cabin erupted into a chorus of murmurs as other passengers began to take notice of the confrontation. The supportive gazes of David and Mia offered a small measure of strength. But the majority of passengers remained silent, their discomfort palpable. Marcus felt the weight of their silent judgment pressing down on him, the confined space amplifying the tension between him and Tessa. He knew he couldn't let her accusations define him, but the emotional toll was taking its toll on his resolve. As the flight continued, Marcus felt his anger simmering beneath the surface, a burning determination to assert his rights and demand fair treatment. He could no longer ignore the injustice he was facing, the subtle prejudices that seemed to taint every interaction with Tessa. With each passing minute, the pressure mounted, the conflict between Marcus and Tessa inching closer to an inevitable confrontation. The support from David and Mia provided a lifeline. But Marcus knew that he had to find a way to navigate the escalating tension without losing his composure. As the cabin lights dimmed once more and the plane cruised steadily above the clouds, Marcus felt the breaking point approaching. The confined space of the airplane had become a battleground, a microcosm of the larger struggles he faced in his professional and personal life. The silent tensions, the unspoken judgments, and the subtle biases were converging, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test his resilience and determination. He took a deep breath, centering himself for the challenges ahead. The time had come to confront the injustice head-on, to stand up for his dignity and assert his right to be treated with respect. The support from his fellow passengers gave him the strength he needed to face the storm that was brewing within the confined space of the airplane. Little did he know, the events unfolding in the cabin would set in motion a chain of actions that would challenge his beliefs, his relationships, and his very sense of justice. The breaking point was near, and Marcus was determined to navigate it with unwavering resolve. The cabin had quieted down after the intense exchanges between Marcus Ellis and Tessa Blake. The once palpable tension had settled into an uneasy calm, but the air remained thick with unspoken frustrations and lingering judgments. Marcus leaned back in his seat, the cool bottle of water offered by David Harris providing a brief moment of relief. Yet, the recent confrontations had left him emotionally drained, his mind racing with a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Mia Collins, the young flight attendant with a heart of gold, approached Marcus's row once more. Her eyes held a mixture of concern and determination as she placed a discreet bottle of water on his tray. "Here you go, Marcus," she whispered softly, ensuring no one else noticed the exchange. "I thought you might need this." Marcus accepted the bottle with a grateful nod, his appreciation evident despite the turmoil swirling within him. "Thank you, Mia. I really appreciate it." Before Mia could say more, Tessa Blake reappeared, her presence casting a shadow over the already strained atmosphere. Her eyes immediately fixed on the bottle Mia had placed on Marcus's tray, suspicion etching deeper into her features. "Sir," she addressed him, her voice icy and accusatory. "You've been asking for water repeatedly. Are you sure there's nothing else you need?" Marcus felt a surge of frustration bubbling beneath his composed exterior. "I just need water, Miss Blake. I haven't requested anything else." Tessa stepped closer, her gaze unwavering and stern. "We have strict policies regarding outside beverages, sir. It's against airline regulations to consume anything brought from outside." Marcus clenched his fists under the table, fighting to maintain his calm. "I haven't brought anything else. I only need water to stay hydrated." Tessa's expression remained unchanged, but her tone grew more menacing. "Your breath carries an unusual scent. Sir, are you certain there's nothing else you've consumed?" Before Marcus could respond, Mia intervened, her voice gentle yet firm. "Tessa, I believe Marcus just needs a bit more water. He's been quite stressed." Tessa shot Mia a sharp look, her authority clearly challenged. "Ms. Collins, please refrain from interfering in passenger service matters." David Harris, who had been observing the situation with growing concern, decided to act. He approached Marcus's row, his presence commanding yet respectful. "Miss Blake," he interjected calmly, "I think Marcus is being unfairly targeted here." Tessa turned her sharp gaze to David, her frustration evident. "Sir, I suggest you focus on your own service. There's no need for further confrontation." David remained unfazed, his eyes meeting Tessa's with unwavering resolve. "I'm simply ensuring that Marcus receives the assistance he needs. There's no harm in that." Mia stood by Marcus's side, her support unwavering despite Tessa's intimidation. "If there's anything else Marcus requires, I'm here to help," she added softly. Tessa sighed, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Very well, sir. I'll bring you another bottle of water shortly." With that, she turned away, her steps brisk and resolute. As she moved down the aisle, Marcus felt a mix of relief and lingering frustration. The support from David and Mia provided a small measure of comfort, but the underlying tension remained, a constant reminder of the injustice he was facing. He glanced around the cabin, noticing that other passengers were beginning to take notice of the unfolding drama. Some offered sympathetic smiles, while others averted their gazes, uncomfortable with the confrontation. Minutes later, Tessa returned, placing another bottle of water on Marcus's tray. This time, she did so with a curt nod, her demeanor unchanging. "There you go, sir. Please let me know if you need anything else." Marcus accepted the water silently, his gratitude unspoken but deeply felt. He took a small sip, relishing the cool liquid that momentarily soothed his dry throat. However, the brief respite was overshadowed by the growing sense of solidarity around him. David leaned in, whispering a few words of encouragement that Marcus couldn't fully hear over the hum of the plane's engines. Determined not to let Tessa's accusations break his resolve, Marcus decided it was time to address the situation head-on. He lifted his hand once more, his voice firm and unwavering. "Miss Blake," he began, "I need assistance with my meal as well. I haven't received anything yet." Tessa approached him again, her expression hardening with each step. "Are you sure you don't need anything else besides water, sir?" Marcus felt his patience waning but remained composed. "Yes, I need my meal. I've been waiting for a long time." Tessa's eyes narrowed, and she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a low, threatening whisper. "If you continue to escalate this situation, I will have no choice but to involve security upon landing." The threat hung in the air, the implication clear and ominous. Marcus felt a surge of defiance rise within him, but he restrained himself, knowing that reacting impulsively would only worsen the situation. He glanced towards Mia, whose conflicted expression mirrored his own turmoil. Before he could respond, David stepped forward once more, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Miss Blake," he said firmly, "Marcus is simply requesting the services he's entitled to. There's no need for further confrontation." Tessa's patience had worn thin, her demeanor rigid and unyielding. "Sir, I suggest you calm down. Any further requests will be noted." Marcus felt the breaking point approaching, the emotional strain becoming almost unbearable. "I'm not trying to cause any trouble," he replied, his voice steady but edged with frustration. "I just want to be treated with the same respect and dignity as everyone else on this flight." At that moment, a ripple of murmurs spread through the cabin as other passengers began to take notice of the confrontation. The supportive gazes of David and Mia offered a small measure of strength, but the majority of passengers remained silent, their discomfort palpable. Marcus felt the weight of their silent judgment pressing down on him, the confined space amplifying the tension between him and Tessa. He knew he couldn't let her accusations define him, but the emotional toll was taking its toll on his resolve. As the flight continued, Marcus felt his anger simmering beneath the surface, a burning determination to assert his rights and demand fair treatment. He could no longer ignore the injustice he was facing, the subtle prejudices that seemed to taint every interaction with Tessa. With each passing minute, the pressure mounted, the conflict between Marcus and Tessa inching closer to an inevitable confrontation. The support from David and Mia provided a lifeline, but Marcus knew that he had to find a way to navigate the escalating tension without losing his composure. As the cabin lights dimmed once more and the plane cruised steadily above the clouds, Marcus felt the breaking point approaching. The confined space of the airplane had become a battleground, a microcosm of the larger struggles he faced in his professional and personal life. The silent tensions, the unspoken judgments, and the subtle biases were converging, setting the stage for a confrontation that would test his resilience and determination. He took a deep breath, centering himself for the challenges ahead. The time had come to confront the injustice head-on, to stand up for his dignity and assert his right to be treated with respect. The support from his fellow passengers gave him the strength he needed to face the storm that was brewing within the confined space of the airplane. Little did he know, the events unfolding in the cabin would set in motion a chain of actions that would challenge his beliefs, his relationships, and his very sense of justice. The breaking point was near, and Marcus was determined to navigate it with unwavering resolve. The cabin had grown increasingly tense, the air thick with unspoken frustrations and silent judgments. Marcus Ellis sat rigidly in his seat, the weight of the ongoing confrontation with Tessa Blake pressing down on him. The support from David Harris and Mia Collins provided a glimmer of hope, But the undercurrent of hostility from Tessa remained a constant reminder of the injustice he was facing. As the hours passed, the flight continued its steady journey across the sky. The overhead lights dimmed again, casting long shadows across the aisle. Marcus took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he knew was inevitable, the final confrontation that would test his resolve and determination. It happened during the second round of meal service. The flight attendants moved with their usual efficiency, distributing trays laden with food and beverages. Marcus watched as Tessa approached his row once more, her expression unreadable yet tinged with an unmistakable edge of suspicion. "Sir," Tessa began, her voice cold and clipped, "I noticed you haven't received your meal yet. Is there a problem?" Marcus met her gaze steadily, refusing to be intimidated. "Yes, there is a problem," he replied firmly. "I've been waiting for my meal, and I haven't received anything despite my requests." Tessa's eyes narrowed, her posture stiffening. "We have a strict service schedule, sir. Delays can happen, but we do our best to accommodate all passengers." Marcus felt his patience waning, the injustice of the situation fueling his determination. "With all due respect, Miss Blake, I've been polite and patient. My requests are reasonable and necessary." Tessa took a step closer, her presence imposing. "Sir, I must insist that you comply with our policies. Any further requests will be noted, and I will have to involve security if necessary." Before Marcus could respond, David Harris interjected, his voice calm yet authoritative. "Miss Blake, Marcus is simply requesting the service he's entitled to. There's no need for further confrontation." Tessa shot David a disdainful look, her authority challenged. "Mr. Harris, I suggest you focus on your own duties. There's no need to interfere in passenger matters." David remained unfazed, his gaze unwavering. "I'm merely ensuring that Marcus receives the assistance he requires. There's nothing wrong with that." Mia Collins approached, her empathy evident in her eyes. "If there's anything else Marcus needs, I'm here to help," she offered gently, hoping to diffuse the escalating tension. Tessa sighed, her frustration palpable. "Very well, sir. I'll bring you your meal shortly." With that, she turned away, leaving Marcus to simmer with frustration and determination. The silent murmurs among the passengers grew louder, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Marcus could feel the eyes of the cabin upon him, a mix of sympathy and silent support fueling his resolve. He knew that the moment was approaching when he would have to confront Tessa head-on. As the flight progressed, Marcus watched the interactions unfold around him. The support from David and Mia bolstered his confidence, while Tessa's persistent suspicion only deepened his sense of injustice. The confined space of the airplane amplified every glance, every word, turning mundane interactions into high-stakes confrontations. Finally, the opportunity presented itself. A few moments after the meal service, Tessa returned to his row, tray in hand. Marcus met her gaze without wavering, his voice steady and resolute. "Miss Blake," he began, "this situation has gone beyond simple service delays. Your accusations are baseless and discriminatory." Tessa's facade of professionalism faltered for a split second, revealing a flash of something darker beneath. "Sir, I have a job to do. Maintaining order and ensuring passenger safety is paramount." Marcus felt a surge of anger, his frustration now bubbling to the surface. "Your approach is not only unprofessional but deeply unjust. I'm being targeted without reason, and it's unacceptable." The cabin fell silent, the tension reaching its peak as passengers watched the unfolding confrontation with bated breath. Tessa's eyes darted around the room, seeking support or validation, but found none. The collective gaze of the passengers bore into her, their silent support for Marcus creating an unspoken alliance against her. "You're crossing a line, sir," Tessa retorted, her voice laced with venom. "I suggest you calm down before things escalate further." Marcus stood up, his posture commanding and unwavering. "I will not stand by and allow this injustice to continue. I demand to be treated with the respect and dignity I deserve." At that moment, David Harris stood beside Marcus, his presence a silent show of solidarity. "Miss Blake, Marcus has every right to speak up against this mistreatment. There's no need for further escalation." Tessa's composure began to crumble under the mounting pressure. Her authority, once unchallenged, now seemed fragile against the united front of Marcus, David, and Mia. The murmurs among the passengers grew louder, a chorus of support for Marcus that left Tessa visibly unsettled. With a final, desperate attempt to regain control, Tessa leaned in closer, her voice low and menacing. "If you continue this behavior, I'll have no choice but to involve security. You don't want that, do you?" Marcus met her gaze defiantly. His voice firm and unwavering. I don't want to escalate things. But I won't back down from standing up against unfair treatment. The tension in the cabin was palpable. The confined space turning into a battleground of wills. Tessa's facade of authority had been shattered. Her disdainful remarks exposed for all to see. The other passengers watched intently, their silent support lending Marcus the strength he needed to confront the injustice head-on. Seeing that her attempts to intimidate him were failing, Tessa took a step back, her shoulders slumping slightly. Very well, sir. I'll note your concerns, she replied, her tone lacking its usual firmness. Marcus felt a wave of vindication wash over him, the collective support of the passengers reinforcing his resolve. I expect this matter to be addressed appropriately, he stated firmly. No one else should have to endure the treatment I'm receiving. As Tessa turned away, her posture rigid and defeated, the cabin erupted into a chorus of murmurs and supportive nods. The silent judgment that had once weighed heavily on Marcus was now transformed into a powerful affirmation of his courage and determination. David placed a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder, his voice filled with encouragement. You did the right thing, Marcus. Stand your ground. Mia offered a warm smile, her eyes reflecting pride and solidarity. We're all behind you. Marcus nodded, feeling a sense of empowerment he hadn't experienced in a long time. The confrontation had reached its climax, and the power dynamics had shifted in his favor. The support from his fellow passengers and the unwavering resolve within himself had turned the tide against Tessa's unjust authority. As the flight continued towards its destination, the atmosphere in the cabin had fundamentally changed. What was once a place of silent judgment and unspoken tensions had become a space of solidarity and collective support. Marcus felt a profound sense of accomplishment, knowing that he had stood up against injustice and inspired others to do the same. Little did he know, the repercussions of this confrontation would extend far beyond the confines of the airplane, setting in motion a series of events that would challenge his resilience and commitment to justice even further. The breaking point had been reached, and Marcus was prepared to navigate the storm that lay ahead with unwavering determination and the support of those around him. The airplane began its descent, the familiar clatter of the landing gear resonating through the cabin. Marcus Ellis felt a mix of relief and apprehension as the realization that the ordeal was nearing its end settled in. The confrontation with Tessa Blake had reached its peak, and the support from David Harris and Mia Collins had fortified his resolve. Yet, the uncertainty of what awaited him upon landing loomed large in his mind. As the plane touched down with a smooth thud, the seatbelt signs illuminated, signaling passengers to prepare for arrival. Marcus took a deep breath, his heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and anticipation. He gathered his belongings methodically, his mind racing through the steps he needed to take next. The support from fellow passengers had emboldened him, but he knew the real battle was yet to come. As the plane taxied toward the gate, Marcus noticed security officers preparing to board. His pulse quickened as he sensed their presence, the tension from the flight now translating into a palpable anxiety. Tessa Blake, her demeanor still rigid, glanced his way with a mix of disdain and suspicion. Her earlier threats about involving security now felt ominously prophetic. Once the plane had come to a complete stop, the cabin doors opened, and the passengers began to disembark in an orderly fashion. Marcus stepped forward, his steps purposeful despite the lingering tension. He moved through the aisle with a composed stride, passing by Mia and David, who offered silent nods of support. As he reached the front of the plane, two security officers approached him, their expressions neutral yet focused. Mr. Ellis, one of them, a tall man with a calm demeanor, addressed him formally. We'd like to speak with you outside the aircraft. Marcus met the officer's gaze steadily, refusing to let fear or frustration show. Of course, he replied evenly, his voice controlled. How can I assist you? The officers led him down the narrow jet bridge, the other passengers watching the scene unfold with a mix of curiosity and concern. Tessa Blake lingered near the front, her eyes following Marcus's every move, her posture stiff with unresolved tension. Once outside, the cool air of the airport greeted Marcus, a stark contrast to the confined space of the airplane. The security officers guided him to a nearby bench, their demeanor professional yet empathetic. We understand there was an incident on your flight, the tall officer began, his tone measured. Would you like to share your side of the story? Marcus nodded, taking a seat and allowing himself a moment to collect his thoughts. Yes. I'd like to provide a detailed account of what happened, he began, his voice steady. From the beginning, I requested water and food, which were met with suspicion and unjust accusations by Miss Blake. Her behavior was not only unprofessional but also discriminatory. As he recounted the events, Marcus emphasized the support he received from other passengers like David Harris and Mia Collins, highlighting their roles in standing up against the mistreatment. He detailed Tessa's escalating hostility and the unwarranted threats of involving security, painting a clear picture of the injustice he had endured. The officers listened attentively, nodding in understanding as Marcus spoke. When he finished, the female officer, a middle-aged woman with a kind yet firm expression, took notes meticulously. "Thank you for sharing your experience, Mr. Ellis. We take these matters very seriously." Before Marcus could respond, David Harris approached, holding up his phone. "I recorded some of what happened," he said, showing the officer a video of Tessa's confrontational behavior and Marcus's composed responses. "This clearly shows how Miss Blake treated him unfairly." The officer's eyes widened slightly as she reviewed the footage, her expression shifting to one of concern. "This is incredibly helpful," she remarked, turning to Marcus. "We will include this in our report." Another passenger, a young woman with a laptop, stepped forward, sharing her own video capturing the incident. One by one, several other passengers came forward with their own recordings and statements, each corroborating Marcus's account of Tessa's misconduct. The collective evidence was overwhelming, leaving no doubt about the unjust treatment Marcus had faced. Once all the evidence was collected, the officers turned their attention back to Marcus. Based on the testimonies and video evidence, it appears that Miss Blake's actions were not in line with our policies, the female officer concluded. "We will be forwarding this report to the airline's Customer Relations Department for further review." Tessa Blake, having observed the proceedings from a distance, approached them hesitantly. Her earlier confidence had been shattered by the mounting evidence and the unwavering support from other passengers. "I was just doing my job," she protested weakly, her voice lacking its usual authority. The female officer met her gaze with unwavering firmness. "Miss Blake, your behavior has been deemed inappropriate and discriminatory. We have multiple accounts from passengers that indicate you acted unprofessionally and violated our commitment to treating all passengers with dignity and respect." Tessa's face paled, her carefully controlled facade crumbling under the weight of the evidence and the judgmental stares of the gathered passengers. "I was following protocol," she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. The officers remained resolute, regardless of intent. "Your actions have caused significant distress and are unacceptable. We will be forwarding this report along with all evidence to the airline for further action." With that, Tessa turned and walked away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. The tension in the air began to dissipate as the reality of the situation set in. Marcus felt a profound sense of relief and vindication wash over him, knowing that justice was finally being addressed. As he stood up, David placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing, Marcus," he said warmly. "Standing up against that was important." Mia approached next, her smile genuine and supportive. "We're all behind you," she affirmed, her eyes reflecting pride and solidarity. Marcus nodded, gratitude swelling within him. "Thank you, both of you. I couldn't have done this without your support." The female officer addressed Marcus once more. "We will ensure that your complaint is thoroughly reviewed and that appropriate actions are taken. Your courage in standing up against injustice is commendable." Marcus felt a surge of determination. "I appreciate that. I just hope this sets a precedent to prevent others from experiencing the same treatment." As the final passengers began to exit the jet bridge, the support from the crowd lingered, a silent testament to the power of solidarity and the importance of standing up against discrimination. Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that his actions had not only addressed his own mistreatment but also contributed to a larger movement towards fairness and respect. Walking towards the arrivals area, Marcus reflected on the events of the flight. The confrontation had tested his resilience and pushed him to his breaking point, but it had also unveiled the strength of community and the impact of collective action. He knew that the journey was far from over, but with the support of those around him and the evidence he had gathered, he was ready to pursue justice and advocate for meaningful change. As he stepped into the bustling terminal, the weight of the ordeal began to lift, replaced by a sense of empowerment and determination. The flight had been a crucible, forging his resolve to confront injustice wherever it appeared. With each step he took, Marcus felt more confident in his ability to navigate the challenges ahead, knowing that he had the support of a community that stood beside him in his fight for respect and dignity. Little did he know, the formal review and the repercussions of this incident would propel him into a new phase of his life, one where he would become a beacon of resilience and a champion for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. The journey had tested him, but it had also transformed him. igniting a passion for justice that would guide him through the battles yet to come. The sun streamed through the glass doors of the airline's corporate office, casting a warm glow on the polished reception area. Marcus Ellis walked through the expansive lobby with purposeful strides, the weight of the past hours still pressing on his shoulders. The formal review meeting was just hours away, and the anticipation mingled with a lingering sense of anxiety. Yet, beneath it all, a newfound confidence buoyed his steps. He had stood up against injustice aboard that flight, and now he was here to ensure that his voice, and the voices of others, would be heard. As he entered the large conference room, Marcus was greeted by Olivia Bennett, the HR representative who had been coordinating the review process. Her professional demeanor softened as she offered a warm smile. "Mr. Ellis, thank you for coming in today. Please, have a seat." Marcus nodded, taking a seat at the large, oval table surrounded by airline executives and human resources personnel. The room was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the bustling airport below. The air was filled with a mix of anticipation and solemnity, each attendee aware of the gravity of the meeting. Olivia began the proceedings, her voice steady and reassuring. "Mr. Ellis, we appreciate you taking the time to meet with us in person. We've thoroughly reviewed the statements from you and other passengers, as well as the video evidence provided by Mr. Harris and others. Your experience has highlighted serious issues within our service protocols that we are committed to addressing." Marcus felt a surge of relief mixed with apprehension. "Thank you, Olivia. I believe it's crucial for the company to understand the impact of such behavior and to take steps to prevent it in the future." Olivia nodded, gesturing for Marcus to continue. "Please, go ahead." Taking a deep breath, Marcus recounted the events of the flight once more, emphasizing the unjust treatment he received from Tessa Blake. He spoke of the emotional toll, the humiliation, and the importance of standing up against systemic racism. As he spoke, he could see the executives exchanging glances, their expressions shifting from skepticism to concern. When he finished, a silence hung in the air, heavy with the weight of his testimony. Olivia leaned forward, her tone empathetic yet professional. "Mr. Ellis, we take these matters very seriously. Based on the evidence and the testimonies from multiple passengers, it's clear that Miss Blake's behavior was unacceptable and against our company's policies on discrimination and customer service." One of the executives, a stern-looking man in a tailored suit, spoke up. "Miss Ellis, we sincerely apologize for the distress and inconvenience you experienced. This incident does not reflect the values we uphold as a company. We are taking immediate action to address this." Olivia continued. "Miss Blake has been terminated from her position effective immediately. Additionally, we are implementing comprehensive training programs to ensure that all our staff are equipped to handle such situations with the professionalism and respect our passengers deserve." Marcus felt a profound sense of vindication wash over him. "I appreciate that the company is taking these steps. It's important not only for my own dignity but for the dignity of all passengers who might face similar discrimination." The executive nodded. "Absolutely. Furthermore, we would like to offer you compensation for the ordeal you endured, as well as a formal written apology from our company. While this cannot erase what happened, we hope it conveys our commitment to making things right." Olivia handed Marcus a sealed envelope. "This includes the compensation details and the official apology letter. We hope that moving forward, you will see tangible changes in our service protocols." Marcus accepted the envelope, feeling a sense of closure begin to settle in. "Thank you. I believe these actions will make a meaningful difference." As the meeting concluded, Olivia walked Marcus to the door, her expression one of genuine concern and support. "Mr. Ellis, please know that your courage in speaking up has not only addressed your own mistreatment but has also initiated positive changes within our organization. We are committed to fostering an environment of respect and equality for all our passengers and staff." Outside the conference room, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. The journey had been arduous, filled with moments of frustration and helplessness, but it had also revealed the strength of solidarity and the importance of standing up against injustice. He found David Harris and Mia Collins waiting for him, their faces reflecting pride and admiration. "Well done, Marcus," David said, clapping him on the back. "You handled that with incredible strength and dignity." Mia smiled warmly. "We're all proud of you. Your courage made a difference." Marcus nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude towards his allies. "Thank you both. I couldn't have done this without your support." As they walked towards the exit, Marcus felt a profound sense of closure. The formal apology from the airline and the termination of Tessa Blake were not just personal victories but symbolic steps towards broader institutional change. The incident had sparked conversations about discrimination and the importance of respectful service, echoing far beyond the confines of that single flight. A week later, Marcus received a call from the airline's customer relations department, inviting him to attend a follow-up meeting. The airline had initiated policy reforms, including mandatory sensitivity training for all staff and the establishment of a dedicated diversity and inclusion committee. These measures were designed to prevent future incidents and to foster a culture of respect and equality within the company. At the meeting, Olivia Bennett reiterated the airline's commitment to these changes. "We are dedicated to ensuring that incidents like the one you experienced do not happen again. Your feedback has been instrumental in shaping our new protocols, and we are grateful for your willingness to stand up and advocate for what is right." Marcus felt a surge of pride and hope. "I'm glad to hear that these changes are being implemented. It's important for the company to recognize and address these issues head-on." The meeting concluded with Olivia presenting Marcus with a certificate of recognition for his role in driving positive change within the airline. "Your courage and resilience have not only impacted your own experience but have also contributed to a better and more inclusive environment for all our passengers and employees." As Marcus left the corporate office, he felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond personal vindication. He had navigated a challenging ordeal with grace and determination, transforming a moment of discrimination into a catalyst for meaningful change. The support from his allies and the collective action of the passengers had demonstrated the power of unity and the importance of standing up against injustice. Walking through the bustling airport once more, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The flight that had tested his patience and resilience had also unveiled his inner strength and the significance of community support. He knew that his advocacy for fairness and respect was far from over, but he felt empowered to continue fighting for justice, not just for himself but for others who might find themselves in similar situations. As he boarded his next flight, Marcus carried with him a renewed sense of purpose and confidence. The challenges he had faced had only strengthened his resolve to create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their background or circumstances. With each step forward, he embraced the lessons learned from his ordeal, ready to advocate for change and inspire others to stand up against injustice. The experience had transformed him, igniting a passion for equality and resilience that would guide him through future battles. Marcus Ellis walked with his head held high, knowing that he had made a difference and that his journey towards justice had only just begun.